Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Decaf. Taylor is out this week, so we're all thankful. So I was lucky enough to get Ron Schultes to come on here to do the show with me. So thanks for joining us, Ron.
Hey, thanks for having me. And it's time. It was time for an upgrade. I mean,
It is time for an upgrade. We went from like a Galaxy 5 to like the new iPhone. And I also wore this hat because I'm not even a Georgia fan, but Ron's a big Georgia Tech fan, so it's more just a trolling move. I don't even care for Georgia, although I am happy they beat Alabama in the championship. So
yeah, it's been a rough couple of months as a Tech fan. I'll just say that.
it's been a rough couple of months for you, just generally, as all the sports you like seem to have been struggling.
That is true. That's true. Yes, thanks for pointing that out.
But there's good things on the horizon. You feel good. Your quarterback's back, even though your star receiver's not. So I mean, that's something.
Yes.
So let's start out by talking about something that you actually helped write. There's a new report coming out next week that Beacon did with Dan Smith and the Perry team at Middle Tennessee State about licensing. So we have to wait till the release next week to see it all, but give us some of the high level takeaways of what this report is about, why you did it, and kind of what some of the findings were on it.
Yeah, so I was really excited to be able to work with Dr. Dan Smith and his team over there at Middle Tennessee State. I think we have obviously talked a lot about licensing at Beacon, but we've tend to focus on like individual licenses, right? And for example, we talked about hair braiding in the past. Animal massage therapy, locksmiths, all these like very specific licenses and how they impact people. And of course, it's very important. What this study wanted to do is actually let's sit back and look at all of these licenses in aggregate, in total. Like, what is the cost on Tennessee's economy? So what we did is we did an analysis of what are the costs between schooling, licensing, the actual fees for it, renewal costs. What is the dead weight that this puts on Tennessee's economy? And it's in the hundreds of millions of dollars.
So it's basically money essentially taken out of the economy because of these unnecessary fees that don't have anything to do with safety or health, right? That's kind of part of the reason.
Oftentimes, yes. And what a lot of people also think too is, oh, well, at least these fees are going towards my schools or roads or something along those lines. But the dirty little secret is actually, for the most part, these licensing fees stay with the licensing boards, which then administer the license. So it's essentially the state creates all these boards to administer these licenses that collect the fees to run the program itself. It doesn't go into the general fund to pay for schools, roads, prisons, things like that. So we're charging, roughly 30% of Tennesseans hundreds of dollars to enter a profession to get a government permission slip to work. And it's not even going to anything but just administering that license.
And we've talked about this too. It is a way to keep kind of low income Tennesseans out of jobs, right? It's hard for them to be able to meet this threshold. Maybe $75 isn't a big deal to me or you, but it is a big deal to somebody who's, on food stamps, who's trying to get off that, trying to start a business. And we even got to hear the story of Deborah, who does hair braiding, and explained that this was a huge issue for her to even start. So, I mean, there's a lot of people that are in low income professions that it's hard for them to even start because of these fees.
Right, because you also have to keep in mind there's usually some kind of education or hours requirement. So then you've got to give up working usually, right? Or take out debt in student loans to go and get the education and the hours. That's time you're out of the workforce, not earning a living, right? So it creates this high barrier. And also you think of like, right now, with it's hard for employers to find employees, you have to find people very specific who can fill those jobs then, because they have to have had this license requirement filled out. Like, for example, I was trying to get a haircut a couple of weeks ago, and I was talking with the lady who was cutting my hair, and she was talking about how they can't find anybody to work. And the whole problem is because we need somebody who's had the 1,500 hours to come in. They can't just come in and train them on how to cut hair, right? They already have had to have had this license for them to hire them. So it creates a lot of problems across, the economy as a whole. And that's what
this. You're kind of politicians that keep talking about, we need to find people to work. Like, we'll get rid of some of the barriers and you can make more people able to work. So
right. It lowers that cost of changing jobs, getting a better job, entering a new field, all these types of things. Yeah.
Well, we're excited to see the report. And also Dan Smith, the coolest guy ever. Like, I've worked with him for a while, and I keep saying Dr. Smith, and he's like, don't call me that, just call me Dan. So many people want you to call them by their title. So you can tell it's a cool guy, but he's like, no, don't use the doctor, just Dan's fine. So we're excited to see that report. And, and there'll be, I think, Dr. Smith also wrote an op-ed too that's going to be placed. It's going to be run next Thursday.
Yes, yeah, we've written a couple of together that have some really amazing quotes as well, and some research we found, like why some of these licenses were instituted in the first place, like the barber license almost 100 years ago. And it's pretty fascinating when you find out the real reason behind some of these.
Well, we're excited to see it. So let's move on here and talk about some more nonsensical regulations. And that is New York City has kind of been the poster child for, I'd say, inconsistent COVID regulations.
Yeah.
So they finally got rid of the vaccine mandate. We actually just went, me and my wife just went. They didn't ask me for my vaccine card anywhere. It finally expired. You don't have to wear a mask in public. So they were about a year and a half too late, but they were finally going in the right directions. But there's still some weird rules that Kyrie Irving is a star player for the Nets, cannot play because he's unvaccinated at home games. Opposing players can play at home games who are unvaccinated. Fans who are unvaccinated can go to the game, but he can't play. And Eric Adams' excuse was, oh, well, just get vaccinated. Like that doesn't show the inconsistency of the rules are insane. So finally, Thursday, it will finally end. Kyrie Irving can play. I think that the Yankees are about to start their season. Aaron Judge is unvaccinated. I'm sure that probably played a part in it. But is this not one of the most insane regulations that you've seen? Not in terms of like, forget the health and safety, forget whether you're, pro-vaccine, anti-vaccine, any of that stuff, but the inconsistency of the rules. Doesn't it just kind of show you one of the worst examples of what government does?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it just shows, like, for one, it's not based upon logic, right? It's based upon oftentimes virtue signaling, right? They want to look like they're taking care of these things. And you have, as you pointed out, all the inconsistencies where fans can be there, but he couldn't, and obviously he's lost, right? Because I think he gets unpaid for every game that he misses. So he's lost, I don't know, tens of millions of dollars at this point. So I'm sure, knowing your betting habits, I'm sure once you heard this news, you probably put a bet on the Nets because the odds are going to go, increase because now he can actually play. I just think it's just, I'm sure most people out there are ready for this to end. Right. And so New York is kind of like the last vestige, I feel, of some of this craziness that we're seeing. And I'm so glad it's finally off the book so we can feel like, okay, this is finally going to make more sense now. And when I can't even watch ESPN without talking about vaccine mandates and Kyrie Irving and all this stuff right now. And I just want to be able to watch some sports,
Yeah, well, I'm trying to watch sports. They're talking about Florida laws that have nothing to do with anything ESPN related, but right. I don't even know. ESPN has gone way off the deep end. But
it's the politicization of everything,
I know, and it's dumb because it's not, their fans don't want that, and it just doesn't make any sense. But the other question is, like, at what point do people just get so fed up? Forget the whole vaccine mandate, forget any of those things, but saying this is the easiest common sense thing you could do. How could it be possible that an opposing player can come in and play?
Right.
That's unvaccinated. How is it possible a fan can be next to, whatever, 20,000 other fans unvaccinated, but that a player who just happens to live in New York can't do the same thing? I mean, that's, at what point are you like, this just does, whether you think that the vaccine mandate should be forever, you have to say this is just completely unfair. Even Trevor Noah talked about it.
Yeah.
At what point do you say, how can you trust a government that does this?
Well, and two, I mean, we have to keep in mind that these are like people like Kyrie Irving, who's at the peak of physical health and everything too, right? He's an NBA athlete. Like, these people are almost they're not even normal people, right? Just because of their physical gifts and talents and just their bodies are machines, right? I mean, like, in terms of their peak physical condition and stuff. And yet, so he can't, just because he lives in New York, right? And so it's somehow unsafe for him. But as you pointed out, but visiting teams, because their players don't live in New York, right? I mean, and who would want to live in New York for the taxes and all that anyways, I mean, I don't know.
But that's another point, because the peak physical condition thing matters, right? It's like, these are the 0.001% of the top athletes in the world.
Right.
I've not heard any NBA player have any issues with COVID. I mean, they got in it, but there's not been anybody who's been deathly sick or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was one player for like the Vikings who was hospitalized for like a week, I think, and obviously had problems with chest pains and breathing. Sure. But after that, he was fine, right? Like, I mean, they literally skew the results as it is. And so picking on essentially this weird, like, dual standard just because he lives in New York City, but these guys who we all know are in top physical condition and health. I mean, was it like LeBron James spends $1 million a year on just like maintaining his body with trainers and everything. That these guys do this, but because they lived anywhere else, they get to play. It's just nuts. And
LeBron James $1 million might be better off in like a history class of how China works. But either way, he does do that.
Receding hairline, I guess I should.
That's right. Yeah. Rogaine would be a better choice for him. So that is the case. But Eric Adams too, not an insane. I mean, he's not Bill de Blasio. He's not an insane person. But it just shows that these inconsistencies are. I think people are done with them, and hopefully moving forward, this makes an impact. I think even the people on the far left who are extremely worried would say this is still not fair. So moving on, we'll talk about Kyrie Irving's alma mater. Duke is in the Sweet 16. It's been a very exciting tournament so far. You've had the St. Peter's crazy upset, beating Calipari, then knocking off Murray State, our neighbors to the north there. But it's been a very exciting tournament so far. And it's the one year, I think maybe in recent history, I remember, where there's not a clear favorite. There's not even a clear maybe top three. So I guess so far, I know you're a basketball fan too. What has been kind of your biggest takeaway from the tournament, and who do you think wins it all moving forward?
I think, first of all, my big takeaway, you're right. I think this is what we have seen the past couple of years, is just continually we're getting to where there's less and less like dominant teams, where I feel like you're having more and more upsets. This year it's St. Peter's. For a couple of years, it was Loyola Chicago.
Oral Roberts last year made the Sweet 16.
Yeah, going on these crazy runs. And I wonder if it's fun in the short run, but I think also it's what also makes college basketball kind of more boring during regular season. I know you love college basketball all year, but I think we're getting to a point where a lot of people are like, college basketball regular season almost doesn't care, because we're just waiting to see what happens in the tournament. In terms of this year, I lean towards Villanova. I think they're going to be the team that pulls it. They at least beat, Ohio State solidly by 10 points. They obviously beat what has been one of the recent Cinderella stories. They don't have to play Tennessee because Michigan upset them, so that they play Michigan next. And I don't know, Arizona looks shaky too, who's probably who they'll end up playing to get to the Final Four. So I don't know. I think if I had to, I'm not a betting man like you, but I think they're probably the team that I look at is probably the strongest coming down the stretch for me. So,
well, I love that pick, because also they had the best coach left. I think they had the best coach in college basketball. I think, say what you want about Coach K, he's a great coach, but right now I take Jay Wright over anybody in a game. I mean, people forget too, you want to talk about Nova, they were 15 points up on the eventual national champions Baylor at halftime last year during the tournament without Colin Gillespie, who's back. So I mean, like they know how to play in March. So I like that pick.
Obviously an established program, right? As you point out, like they know what they're doing, tough coaching. So that's who I've got coming out.
I like it. Yeah. And I mean, this has been one of my favorite tournaments so far. And I am usually, like last year when my bracket did great, I had a really hard time. My Kentucky-Iowa championship game looks really bad right now. But my Miami to the Elite Eight is still in play, which I'm excited about. So I like
also, as you and I were talking about beforehand, like I feel like the tournament this year, while it has been fun and interesting, has actually been overshadowed by the NFL free agency season. Like NFL free agency has almost been like NBA free agency this year. It's been insane. Some of the blockbuster moves, trades. It's like every day something is crazy is happening in the NFL too. So
how many star quarterbacks are we going to see on a new team? Like I feel like every day we're finding, oh, there's Wilson, there's
right. I mean, it used to be one of the rules of the NFL. If you had a franchise quarterback, you did not trade him, and now it's like they're like NBA players, king pieces. You're moving around the chessboard. It's insane, and especially wide receivers too.
It's crazy to do, because I have a hard time. Like I'm trying to pay attention. It's like, oh my gosh, all these things are happening, but I'm so focused on college basketball. I'll worry about this in 2 weeks. I'll see what happened. I mean, I'll see the big moves on ESPN, but it has been a crazy time. And I disagree. I mean, the tournament's just this is the greatest. I hear what you said about the regular season, but this is the greatest sporting event that we have. March Madness is as good as it gets, I think. And I mean, the St. Peter's thing shows you it's the only sport where you can really have a true upset. I mean, even in the college football playoffs, in the NFL playoffs, all the other playoffs, you can't really have a true upset, because you don't have the 68th best team playing the number one overall.
Right. That's fair.
And they're not even the 68th best team, right? Because they're an automatic qualifier from some terrible conference. They're probably closer to the 200th best team. So I think that's great. It's been a great tournament. I like Texas Tech to win it all. I actually like Texas Tech versus Nova in the championship. I think defense wins in the tournament. I think coaches win in the tournament. And I love both those teams. They're both kind of long shots compared to the other ones. Everyone's kind of thinking Gonzaga is going to win, but I think Texas Tech beats them next round. So we'll see what happens. It's been great.
That means Coach K's final season ends
tonight.
in the game, right? Yeah,
Yep.
tonight.
Yeah, tonight's at Texas Tech. That's kind of and it's interesting. Texas Tech's actually a 1-point favorite. So I mean, other people think they have a shot to beat Duke tonight, and Duke's been just inconsistent all year. And Coach K was lucky to get out of last round, to be honest.
Right.
So let's move on to the last topic. We do this every once in a while. If there's any new shows you've been watching, I just started watching Righteous Gemstones, which is Danny McBride. Fantastic. It's kind of about. Have you ever heard of the show?
I've heard of it, but I don't. Kristen, I think, mentioned it once that she started watching it or something like that.
Oh, it's good. So it's Kenny Powers, otherwise known as that, but it's kind of a cult-like, Christian faith that they basically take money. It's very, very funny. A lot of good actresses in it. I've been very impressed with how I've been laughing a lot on that. And it took me a while to start it, but it's been well worth it. I'm done season 1, so I'm excited. Season 2 is now on HBO Max. So what show have you recently started watching? It doesn't have to be a new show, but something that you like a lot more than you maybe thought you would.
Yeah. So I've been watching, I know it finished a couple of years ago, but I finally got around to watching it, was Mr. Robot. So
that's animated?
No, it is not. It's got Rami Malek, I think is how you say his name. So the bad guy from the most recent Bond movie. So he's the main actor in it. And I got into it because I thought it'd be kind of an interesting, unique, like he's a hacktivist. If you've never heard of that term, like he's a hacker, but does it for not just to scam people or take their money or whatever, but he does it for a cause.
Like anonymous kind of is supposed to be. Is that kind
right?
Of
exactly. Yes. So that's what he is a hacktivist. And so he basically tries to take down greedy corporation, which is kind of synonymous for all greedy capitalist interests, but also in how this capitalist works with big government and China essentially to screw everybody over, and he tries to take them down. But I liked the idea and the concept of that. But it's also very much about his mental health state. And so I don't think I'll be giving too much away if you haven't watched it, but he has a split personality essentially, where he almost has 2 lives that he's living. And so Kristen really likes it too, because she's a psychologist. And so watching all of that, the whole mental health aspect of it. And so he kind of forgets half the stuff he does. And so he sets in in motion these plans, and then doesn't even realize that he did it. So you have to deal with that. So it's been interesting. I'm on the final season. I think I've got 4 episodes left. So I've really enjoyed that. And it's been fun. Season 2 was really slow, but the rest has been really good. I've liked it. So if you kind of dark, kind of slow paced suspense drama building stuff, it's a good show for that.
I just looked at I confused it with Robot Chicken. I guess that is an animated show. So that's what I thought. And also
very different, I'm sure.
I don't know how you and your wife are, but I always find it good when you like the same shows, because that's not always the case. So when you can get into the same shows for different reasons, you can actually watch a show and like it rather than watching, I like trash TV. So me and my wife have a lot more in common TV wise, but sometimes it's hard to find something you both really like equally.
Right. And because then the other problem is too, it's you want to do other things, and it's really hard for okay, hey, I need an hour by myself to just watch a TV show that you don't want to be, watch at all. And then we'll find another hour to trade off. Right. So it's really hard if you don't like shows together. So I totally see what you're saying.
Well, that's good. So I wrote, no, Mr. Robot. I wrote about something else. There's so many robot things. I thank you so much, Ron, for joining us. I had a great time talking to you. Go Pack, and hopefully we see our Nova Texas Tech finals that we are looking for.
That'd be fun. Go Pack, go, and just get rid of that ugly hat. And I'm happy to do it again.
Will do. Okay. Well, we'll see you next week on Decaf.